Okay. Well, thank you all for coming to our first panel. I think some people are still joining in, so I'll do a quick intro first. My name is Kat Smith. I work at Grimm & Parker Architects in Charlottesville, and I am also the Emerging Professionals Liaison for the AIA Central Virginia. So I kind of organized this based off some questions I was getting from some of the membership just about specifically lead AP in the exams, and thought this would be a good opportunity to kind of talk about all the options you have, because there are a lot of them. Hopefully we can talk about several here, but if you have questions that are outside of this, we have a number of well-seasoned, lovely, intelligent people on the call who I'm sure could be able to direct you in the right direction. So I'm going to let our four panelists introduce themselves and maybe do kind of a quick intro, and then we can go right into questions. Who wants to start?
So my name is William Abrahamson. I'm a licensed architect working with Grimm & Parker, and I have, let's see, accreditations. I got my lead AP, my lead accreditation in 2008. I'm also a certified passive house consultant, which I got in 2019. I work mostly in affordable housing.
Thanks, William. Linda, do you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Linda Clark with Grimm & Parker Architects. I work in the Calverton, Maryland office. I specialize for the most part in K through 12 environments. I'm a licensed architect and certified interior designer. One of my other certifications includes WELL AP. So if you have any questions about that, we could definitely talk about that some more.
Hi, everyone. I am a designer one at BMD Architects, specialized in their, I guess not specialized, but a member of their K-12 studio. And I got my CDT this past spring.
My name is Caitlin. I graduated from James Madison University this past May with a BFA in architectural design. I am an intern at Gaines Group Architects. I've been there about 2.5 years. And then I also just got my CDT with Hana this past spring. So that's, it's, constantly trying to move forward and in the midst of the pandemic. So really glad to be here and talk more about CSI and CDT.
Thank you, guys. Do you guys want to maybe quickly kind of just touch on why you got your respective certifications? Especially, I know WELL and CDT are ones that might not be as popular. So what kind of motivated you to go down those routes?
I can talk about the CDT first.
Okay.
I feel like a couple people are in the same position as me, where the school I went to wasn't exactly an architecture accredited university. So when I graduated, I had no idea about really how to put a building together. I knew how to make it look nice, and I knew how to mix and match materials and methods. But when it came to actually, what's the lifespan and life cycle of a building, I didn't have any idea. So I had been interning for about 2 years at that point, and I was getting kind of a general idea, but it was more specific to my office that I was at rather than the industry as a whole. So just, in general, what is architecture? How does it correspond with engineering and construction? Getting a place of the big picture rather than just, what am I learning? Little tidbits and kind of learning by experience. What's the standardized? Where do I fit in?
I feel in the industry as a whole, we're all very much so in our bubbles. So I sought out CSI because I knew it involved members from the entire industry, which includes architects, engineers, contractors, owners, product reps. So I like the idea of knowing what my job is, what people think my job should be, and how I could do my jobs to make sure they can do their jobs as well.
I can go next for the WELL. So I've been working in architecture and interior design since 2008. I started out in interior design. I went to VCU and got my BFA in interior design, and then went to University of Maryland for architecture school. So I got my master's at University of Maryland. And I sort of got the whole approach to understanding the profession. And going into grad school, I'd already worked with members of the profession in other industries, right? Like our other consultants, MEPs, and structural, and those folks. And when I was in school, they talked about LEED a lot, right? And you're probably wondering, why don't I have a LEED certification? I've been doing this for a long time. I want to say in 2008, when I first learned about it, it was really new and everybody was really excited about it. And at the beginning, I thought about getting it, originally going straight in, but then I decided not to and decided to pursue my architecture license first. And I worked on several projects that are LEED projects, and I'm not required to have a LEED AP, right, to work on those projects. I've worked on LEED Platinum projects. I've worked on net zero projects. So I wasn't required to have a certification. And so I took the mindset, and I'm not saying this is for everybody, but I took the mindset that you have to do LEED anyway in most state projects, right? So whether if I'm LEED certified or not, it basically gets you an additional point if you're a registered professional. But it wasn't as important to me to get the certification. I wanted to get all of my other certifications first. So I did the architecture, then I did my interior design certification. And then WELL came out a few years ago, and I was actually more excited about that than going after my LEED certification, even though I had worked in LEED for several years, because it was really focusing on the health and wellness in our buildings and how to make our buildings healthier in general. And as an architect and interior designer, I focus on interior spaces because people spend about 90% of their time in spaces. So for me, it was sort of an aha moment, right? As far as what I was excited about as a designer, someone working this profession, shaping spaces, that I wanted to be a part of that. So I still would probably get my LEED AP only because people asked me to get it, but that's the reason why I chose WELL. And it helps to not only educate the designers about those principles and how to make buildings healthier, but also clients, right? And additional tenants, and how to make those spaces healthy and welcoming for people to want to work there. Sorry, that was a really long-winded answer, but.
No, that was awesome. Thank you.
I'd like to piggyback a little bit off that because I'd like to echo what Linda's saying about LEED. That's been my experience as well. When I went for the certification in 2008, still fairly new. It was both a differentiator for myself as a professional. It was also a skill, knowledge that I was looking to gain and to put into my work. And with the group of people I was working with, that was valuable. That was to have that certification. But as it expanded and as it became more common, and also as the industry specialized in those services, more green consultants, sustainability consultants became more common, the value of just the general LEED accreditation has gone down. That's not diminishing it. But and that's where these specialties have now come in. I'm sure you're all familiar with the specialties and LEED in general, but if I were to do it again right now, I don't know if I would invest the time in it per se from the work I'm doing. So if you are considering it, just be aware of what it can offer you in your professional workspace. For kind of fast forward, I approached the Passive House certification in a similar manner, less about what the certification would allow me to do in my daily work or bring value to clients, but how do I learn this content? On some level, this content is open and free, but also there's a certain level of knowledge that you can only gain by going through that process and their education program. There is a revenue stream that we can now pursue as a company by my having the certification, because it is a billable set of skills outside of our design work. We haven't pursued that yet, but again, when you're looking at certifications to pursue, what value can you bring to your working group to bring in a revenue stream, both doing your own job better, but also bill more?
Does anyone have any questions or comments or concerns?
Yeah, I actually have a few comments. So for those who don't know me, I'm actually a structural engineer. My name is Sal DiPietro, and I know a few of you guys on here. But I'm actually studying for my CDT exam right now. I'm taking it at the beginning of May. And I thought it was really interesting what Caitlin and kind of Hannah brought up about, like, you know, what is your role in all of this in the project delivery method? And, you know, I'm not like fully done studying, but I've been learning so much because I think a lot of you are architects, but for me, I'm a structural engineer. So I work with a lot of different architects. And my clients, you know, do things very differently, very simple, like residential work, or they're like high performance spec writers. And the reason I have been seeking out the CDT exam, certification is because I want to be able to serve those clients who do the specs, who do state projects, and this also touches upon what William was saying, was like adding value to your firm. And I think I reviewed what the CDT had to offer, and I was like, this is value for my firm. And anyone who really wants to be a project manager, I feel like should take the CDT exam and just really understand like the contracts, the relationships between all the different players, the contractors. Not to talk too much, but just studying alone, I had a real life experience really helped me. I was on the field, and what I found out was that like the documents we produce are the contract for what they build upon. A lot of the times the contractor will pressure me to make a decision and a change that is in the field based on existing conditions. But I have to change it on those drawings through an ASI, and if it's small enough, an RFI. Otherwise, they still legally are obligated to follow the documents. And if something goes wrong 10 years down the line, you know, the lawyer is going to say, well, you're supposed to follow these CDs, right? And so I mentioned to them, I was like, I can't give you an answer in the field. Like it has to be changed on the documents. So anyways, that's my spiel about the CDT so far.
No, yeah. And like the biggest value, I mean, for the CDT, I had to learn the hard way kind of, is that a lot of firms do things differently than what is industry standard, but it still works for the firm. It works for the project. And so one thing you have to be aware of is that, like, there was one thing when it came to construction documents where like Gaines Group does things differently. And it wasn't until, you know, I was studying for the CDT that I really started to get tripped up, because there were different standards or practices that we would use that would be a wrong answer on the CDT. And there's nothing wrong with it. But I think that was like my lowest scoring category, even though like I work in construction documents every single day, all day.
Yeah.
But it's just because, you know, there's so many different ways to do things. But again, I think the biggest value that the CDT brings to the industry is that it does set a standard. You know, this is how it's supposed to be done. So as long as everybody can agree and acknowledge what they're doing differently, that's where we can start to see that consistency and see that value. But yeah, like when I graduated, I had no idea the right way or the wrong way to be doing things. I was just doing what I was told, which, you know, there's nothing wrong with that as long as it's right in somebody's eyes. But being able to see that there are different ways to do things, and acknowledging when somebody is actually doing something wrong. Like when you saw it in the field, it could just be like, oh yeah, let me write that up real quick. Let me change that real quick. That's not how you're supposed to do it, even if, you know, that's something, oh, well, I've done it in the past, like this guy before you did it for me.
Exactly.
So having that value for yourself and for your firm is really important. And again, like for some of our, like, I think it's the contractor, they have a couple people who we've worked with, they're assistants, but they know a lot and they help us a lot through the process. But it's the kind of thing where we can tell sometimes that they haven't taken the CDT, they aren't really involved with, you know, how things are supposed to be done. It's just that's how they've always done it. So it's like how do you ask someone politely to maybe look into the CDT so that we can all get on the same page? Because you don't want to say, that's wrong, that's stupid. But it's like, maybe, we should all learn more so that the industry and these different, architecture, engineering, construction, we can be on the same page.
Kat, I'd like to jump in here if I could.
Yeah, please.
So I'm Steve Munt with Grimm & Parker. I'm the Charlottesville studio leader. I'm curious to know how many of the emerging professionals in this group have already passed all the sections of the ARE. Don't see any hands. How many of you passed some of the sections of the ARE? Don't see any hands. Okay. So
we've got some newbies on this call today.
All right, yeah, that's great. So I came to talk a little bit about CSI and CDT and CCS as well. And I'll tell you my own experience. I graduated LSU in 1990 and went to work in New Orleans. And I moved up to Virginia just in 93. I took the exam in 94 and passed the exam back then. That's back when the exam was only offered once per year, and you had to go to Richmond for a period of 4 days and take all parts, all 9 parts. It was 9 parts then, 9 parts of the exam. But prior to that, while I was still in New Orleans, I went to work for a firm that was actually a civil and structural engineering firm, because it was really hard to get a job in architecture in New Orleans, anywhere in the Deep South in the 90s. So I found a job at the civil and structural engineering firm, and the senior partner there told me, you got to get into CSI right away, and you should do CDT and CCS. You need to do this. I had no idea what it was all about. But I did know one thing, which no doubt many of you have already discovered. When you first start work and you just come out of school and you're just beginning to realize how little you know about so many things, and you see a project manual for the first time, which you may have never even seen one, like a full-size one in your professional practice course or whatever. And it's tough enough just to know what's going on with divisions 2 through 33. There's so much stuff in that project manual. And then you start looking at division 1 and at the front ends, and you're just completely clueless as to what all this stuff is. A lot of it looks like documents that were prepared by lawyers, not by architects, which in fact they are. And it's really intimidating. Anyway, I took the CDT exam, and then I took the CCS exam, and I passed both of those. When I went to take my ARE, the first exam that I took of the 9 parts, the first exam was the construction documents and services portion. And I breezed through that exam so easily. I don't know what my score was, but I honestly felt when I finished it that I had answered every question correctly. And I thought, wow, if all 9 parts of the exam are as easy as this one was, this is going to be a cinch. Well, I did pass all 9 parts, but the construction documents and services was by far the easiest of the exams because I had done the CDT exam. And the things that you learn are so critical to understanding how to put together a set of documents the right way. And once you get into construction, to use those documents in the right way. And when Caitlin said a few times there, well, it's not that these other ways are wrong. I think she was being generous, because really what you discover is a lot of these ways really are wrong. I mean, they're just wrong. A lot of things that architecture firms do are bad habits that have been passed down from generation to generation. And the only reason they still exist is that these people who are doing them haven't had that one bad experience in the field, that they've been fortunate enough to not have to learn lessons the hard way. The way the CSI prepares you to use these documents, to prepare these documents and use them, has been developed in coordination with AIA documents and EJCDC documents, so that it is the right way. I can promise you that. It's the right way that's going to dovetail the best with the documents that you are probably using. And even if your contract is not an AIA contract or an EJCDC contract, still these practices have been developed over decades and decades. They didn't just make them up for arbitrary reasons. They work well. And when you start working in a firm and you find out that people are doing things that are not the best way they could be done, it is awkward to be a very junior person trying to explain, there's actually a better way to do this. Here it is. Yeah, it's awkward, but, and you will get the answer. You will certainly get the answer. Nah, we've been doing it this other way for a long time. I mean, you're going to get that answer. You can only do what you can do. But I can promise you, you're going to be so much better prepared as a professional if you have taken these courses and and learned this material. And certainly you'll pass that section of the exam a lot more easily. But the CDT is a construction documents technologist. The CCA is CCS Certified Construction Specifier, which just upgrades those skills. And then CCCA, Certified Construction Contract Administrator. That one I never did do, but I presume it's very valuable itself. But those are now, back when I took them, you didn't have to maintain your certification. You just passed them one time and you were done. They've changed that since then. So I'm no longer, I cannot put CDT or CCS behind my name. I don't maintain those credentials, but I certainly maintain the value that I got from that coursework. Highly recommend.
I'll be
You
honest.
heard it here first, guys.
I'll be honest with you. For a moment, I didn't quite know where you were going with it. I thought you were going to say the CDT was the worst thing. It completely contradicted the other, everything else you had done. So for a moment, I was thinking, I'm just going to exit stage left.
Nope,
over here.
far from it.
No, but yeah, I mean, like I said, I didn't go to an accredited university, so I can either get my master's or, like, right now I'm looking to get licensed in Tennessee first, because I can, sooner, but yeah, I haven't looked much further into the exams that I need for licensure. And so it's honestly very reassuring to hear that the CDT does help with those licensing exams as well.
I have a follow-up crowdsourcing question. How many of you have actually reviewed specifications on a project before? Okay. Haley, I'm sorry, you're the only one. But I think, because I have also done it, but like Steve said, the 33 divisions, which I still have not memorized and will probably not memorize for several years, can be very complicated. So I think getting a head start and understanding what each of those divisions mean and why they are set up that way is really important. And when you go back to do your drawings, or when you are checking your drawings, especially against the specifications, it makes it a lot easier to understand what the heck is going on between the two. Because I know I have found many an issue where our drawings say one thing and our specifications say something totally different, and you have no idea which one is correct. And trying to have to reconcile those differences can be a really big wormhole.
I'd also like to say that both the specifications and the drawings are part of the contract documents. So your seal would be going on both of those areas. So if those drawings and documents are meant to talk to each other, you should be aware of what's going in it and what they're saying, especially if it's going to be your name on the line.
Yeah,
absolutely. And they're meant to be complementary, right? So they go together. And I was finding, like, not at my current firm, but my previous firm, is like you would have a team, like as a structural engineer, you'd have like the main designers, right? But then you have the project manager who stamps it. But like the project manager was doing the specs, but he didn't design the building. And there were gaps there. And that's kind of why I really got interested in specs and learning how to do them myself, is because I was like, well, I'm the one designing this. Like, I need to make sure that they are matching up. And I didn't even know what they were when I started, working. And it was kind of confusing because it's all these numbers and you're like, what is this? But then, like, as you learn, you're like, oh, wait, they just tell you how to do this, and they just go into more detail about, steel, masonry, concrete. And now I find a lot of value in being able to write specs myself.
So Haley, go read your specifications for your project. That's your homework.
We were making a joke on the other VMZO people that depending on what part of the practice you work on, you might be only working on one phase of the project typically. So I think this is a good reminder to me that I might be wanting some more experience in other phases.
Yeah, the point that Hannah made that these are construction documents, it can't be made strongly enough. I mean, CDs doesn't just stand for construction documents, it stands for contract documents. That's what you said, I misspoke. Contract documents. And when you prepare contract documents and you're coordinating your drawings with your specifications, you have to have the same level of care about detail and phrasing as would a lawyer. My boss, all of our boss at Grumman Parker, Jim Boyd, you know, he's told the story a few times how you know, a lawyer confronted him once and said that you know, per Virginia law and really most state laws, you are not permitted to work in the field of contract preparation unless you are a lawyer, and that every architect in his mind was violating the law by being in the field of contract preparation without a law degree. And I don't actually have a good counter argument to that. I mean, that sounds like a legitimate concern to me, because we really are preparing contract documents, and you have to coordinate your Division 2 through 33 specifications. You know, each one of those has a general part at the beginning, and the provisions of that general section have to be coordinated with your general conditions, which have to be coordinated with your supplementary conditions if you have them, and your special conditions if you have them, which have to be coordinated with the agreement, you know, the actual form of contract itself. There's so much coordination, and knowing what information is supposed to go in what documents, which document it belongs in, which other documents might reference it, so that if you make a change in one of those documents, you know what the implication, you know, which other documents are have ripple effect, and you can make sure to go to those documents and as well to coordinate them, because it's not good to find out in the, you know, when you're in the field that that you've got this major conflict between two different documents, and it's resulting in a significant change order. Owner's not happy when that happens.
And actually related to that, so we had mentioned the CCA before, which is the construction, what is it? The Construction Contract Administration Certification. So like, in order to take this exam through CSI, you first have to take the CDT, because the CDT is really the framework. And then from there, you can branch up with these other further certifications. So the CCA, and this is directly from the CSI website, it's developing, administrating, and enforcing construction documents. So those construction documents become almost your Bible. I mean, you learn those things inside and out. So if that's something, I mean, they're contract documents, if that's something you want to learn more about, or you feel like you need to know to improve, you know, the quality of your projects, your documents, that's a certification that I'm studying for right now. And I think Hannah, she's going to be taking her CCS soon. That's the one she's studying for. So you can really decide what you want to focus on. For me right now, I'm focusing on learning more about these construction contracts. And then from there, I want to learn more about specifications. So there's really things that you can do to make sure that you're, you know, improving the quality of your work 100%. So if you want to learn more about that, I mean, definitely check that out, because that, like you said, those are contract documents, and those are really important.
And it also needs to be said too that after the CDT, the CCCA is actually more geared towards architects, since there are a lot of firms where the architects are the ones who are writing those contract documents. And it's valuable information to know what you're writing and what's expected.
So for emerging professionals, those are the two that I recommend, or I guess the three that I recommend the most, but only because, you know, I have direct experience with them.
I will take this moment to give a plug to the Central Virginia CSI group that helps facilitate studying. And I think they have study documents, right, Caitlin and Hannah, that you can borrow?
There are study resources you can get from the CSI website. They have a handbook and the project delivery practice guide. So those are directly through the website. And then there are also study groups through CSI. So there are actual courses and group study sessions that you can be involved in. And there's also like this huge, whenever you're studying for the CDT, whichever semester you're doing it for, there's this big group chat that's essentially on the website. So you can put in your questions, plug in your answers. So there are a lot of resources and access to study materials that you can get. But if you join the Central Virginia CSI chapter, you are connecting with people who could be right next door or in a firm down the street. So we don't exactly have materials, but we have people who really want to help.
And the forums are very, they're very populated and they're very good at getting answers back to you. You don't have to post the question to the study group. If you just post it widely, people will answer the day of. Mm-hmm. And I mean, both Caitlin and I, we did the study course with the Portland chapter. So you're not limited to just your chapter.
I'm actually just watching the Tampa CSI chapter YouTube videos online because they posted it on YouTube from 2016. So that's kind of
the material. Gotta put a plug there. The book has changed. So
the exam has changed.
Yeah, the exam has changed. It's, from what I can tell, it's the same questions-ish. It's just that things have been updated. I don't know how much the industry needed to be updated in 4 years, but just be aware, like things might be different. They might be wording things differently.
Yeah, I do have the most recent, the CSI guide. Yeah, that. So I am using that in conjunction, but it's always good to see like a visual representation of some of the stuff, which I know some of the stuff might be changed a little bit in terms of words, but like a lot of it does remain the same, I feel like.
Yeah, I would just caution against that, mostly because the exam is very specific in wording, in order. It's not which answer is correct, it's which answer is most correct.
Okay, I mean, that's really good advice, so I appreciate that.
Definitely.
But also, like, again, what we had mentioned earlier, I would recommend joining a CDT study group. Like if you just want to learn the material and read the book, totally 100%, you don't need the certification, you can just learn the material. But if you actually want to get the certification and have those initials after your name, I would recommend joining a study group through the CSI website and taking a course. Hannah and I did our course through, like she said, the Portland chapter with Sharice Lakeside. And she is one of the biggest names in CSI because she really has this passion for helping emerging professionals and she works writing specs. So she is pushing this information so hard across the industry because she has seen firsthand the contradictions and the issues that can come up with documents and processes that don't match up. But yeah, once you join a study group, you can also have access to these forums and study discussion groups as well. And really just meeting a whole new group of people. And you might also be able to talk to your employer as well, because they might cover some study expenses for you. And I'm sure that's not just for, CSI certifications, that could be for a lot of others as well. Talk to your bosses and your firm.
Yeah, a lot of firms will have an education or career development budget.
Steve, you've worked in like the Maryland, DC area as well, right?
That's right.
So this is the first time I'm hearing about CDT.
And the panelist becomes the mentee here.
And I've been working in the field since 2008. So like, do you find that that's more prevalent in Virginia than in Maryland and DC?
So I've always worked in Virginia. Even when I was up there, I was in the Tyson's office. So I never actually worked at our Calverton office. the thing for me is that when I came out of school in Louisiana, CSI was really big in New Orleans. When I went to those meetings at the New Orleans chapter, it seemed like there had to have been like 6 people in that organization who were either currently national officers or past national officers. It was a super gung-ho CSI community down there. When I came up to DC, I immediately joined the DC chapter and found it was not, there just wasn't the enthusiasm there. And so I was a member of the DC chapter for 1 year, and then I left it and I joined the Northern Virginia chapter, and I really felt the same way. So after a year membership in the Northern Virginia chapter, I dropped out. And so I have not been a member of CSI since. But again, it was, for me, it was the importance of the lessons learned in those exams. I haven't been a regular member of CSI ever since. But if I hadn't gone to work in New Orleans first, probably if I had started my professional career in Virginia, I might never have become a member of CSI or taken those exams. Because
I've never talked to anybody in this region about CDT or any other CSI related certification. Like it didn't exist. I was like, what? So this is interesting. It's not like it's a regional thing too. Like it depends on which locations you're in, that this may be a prominent thing.
Because USA and Canada. And the hardship is that there's not a lot of members, and most of those members are a lot older. So it's hard to get the word out, and it's hard to get young interest because not many people are aware of it. So I'm glad you made that point.
I'm sure it's like AIA chapters where the enthusiasm and ability level differs from place to place.
But our current spec writer, Brian Wolf, is very pro CSI, and the spec writer we had before Brian, Brian's back again now after having been away for a time, but even before Brian was here the last time, the spec writer that we had before then was also very pro CSI, and he and I tried to encourage a lot of people in the company to do CSI and do these exams. Didn't really get much traction, so then he and I just developed like an 8-session course, and we taught the principles there in the firm. Even for people who weren't actually had no intention of taking the exam, at least they could stay after at the office for an additional hour once a week for 8 weeks and learn all the principles.
Do you feel that the ARE covers that information as well?
Yeah, that the construction documents and services portion of the exam that I took in 1994, really hit on a lot of the same types of information. I remember the course preparation guide that I used to prepare for the ARE. I didn't feel that it was actually as helpful in helping me to pass the exam as my CDT exam had been. But that's the fault of the exam, of the booklet, the people who prepared the booklet. It's not a reflection of the exam itself.
A little bit of a broader question. I can relate to you, Linda, that until Hannah started talking about the CSI exam, I had never heard of it either, and it's been interesting to learn more about it. But I'm curious to hear from all the panelists and just everyone on this call in general perspective. I've been out of school for a couple of years now. I already have my master's, so have always, there's always the balance of, I think everyone can relate to architecture as a job that fills the space of the time you give it. And I think post-grad have been really focused on, doing a really good job of my job and seeing that through holistically. And when do you carve out time to take exams and prioritize studying? And the straightforward textbook answer is like, you just got to make time to do it. And when, it's part of advancing in your career, but would be curious to hear what that looked like on a more personal, individual level from the panelists and how you decided to prioritize different exams.
So I actually, I'm a notoriously bad studier. It's why I got a Bachelor of Fine Arts, because all of my classes were art classes. But I knew that, like in my head, I knew I was a bad studier. So I wanted to get as many certifications and get all of my study stuff out of the way while everything was still kind of fresh in my head. And I had these habits kind of fresh. So when I started working 40 hours a week right after graduation, it was a difficult transition, just figuring out like, where am I gonna find the time? I get home and I'm tired, and on the weekends, I just want me time. But what I started doing is I just carried my book, my PDPG with me everywhere. Like if I went to the pool, I brought it with me. If I was going to visit family, I would bring it with me. Not just to, like, I wasn't always going to read it in those places, but it just really helped me, get in the practice of at least thinking about it. And I also just made a crap ton of flashcards. Like, I mean, that's honestly, I would have a Quizlet app on my phone so that just in my spare time, I could just flip through some flashcards, because even just making the flashcards helps you remember and organize the information. But of course, you're going to need like time set aside over the weekends or in the evening to just sit down and study. But you shouldn't have to do that and like hate your life because you're studying all the time. Like seriously, make a game out of it. Like make your flashcards, bring your book to the pool, like study while you're outside, like have fun with it so that you're not just feeling like you're constantly putting a mental toll on yourself. So I mean, that's probably not for everyone. It's just something that helped me because I went into it knowing I hated studying. So I found ways to be in more pleasant situations for when I did study.
I've taken,
Oh, you go, Linda.
I've taken several exams, right? So I've taken my ARE, I've taken my NCIDQ exam. When I took the ARE, I think it was, I don't remember, 7, 8 exams. I don't know, but too many, right? And so I took a 2-year period. So I gave myself a few months for each exam, because even if I made a schedule, right, and said I was going to study every Tuesday, Thursday evening, Saturday, and Sunday, right, that life happens. And since life happens, I needed to allow some flexibility in my scheduling. So I would give myself like 3 to 4 months per exam. I may not need 3 to 4 months, but I would give myself that, and then I would just schedule a first exam so I knew I was working towards it. So that was helpful for me because I did easily work 40 plus hours, actually, probably more like 60 hours. And just give yourself sort of the grace of some flexibility in your scheduling is what I would recommend. And the NCIDQ was, how many parts was that? That was 3 parts, 2 written exams, and then a practicum, which was an 8-hour all-day drawing version of like the ARE's vignettes that they used to have. And I think now it's all just answers with the ARE. And then the WELL exam, that one was basically questions and answers. So it's basically like the LEAD exam, right? Like 100 questions you get, and you get a lot of material. I gave myself, so I procrastinated a lot on that exam because I signed up for it and then I had a year to take it. And then I did not start studying until like a month before I had to take the exam. And then I had several deadlines and couldn't take the exam. So I was able to extend it 6 months. And then when that 6 months was almost over, I was about to schedule it to take it, but then the pandemic hit. And then they gave me an additional year. So I ended up taking it in November at the end of last year. And then I crammed for 1 whole weekend to take it and pass the exam. And that's also because 3 months before that, I actually had went through all of the content already in a very slow pace. And then just 1 weekend cramming to refresh it. And then it's pretty simple.
William, you have 4 kids. I want to know what your answer is to this question.
Well, the passive house was a offsite residential. It was a 5-day course away from home. So that helped a lot. Yeah, and I took lead before I had kids. The AREs, the first firm I worked for second, third, I don't know, did not encourage licensure. They took the approach that they only needed one license, technically only needed one licensed architect in the entire firm. And so there wasn't a lot of resources allocated towards that. So as it turns out, I worked for 3 or 4 years without pursuing the RE. And so I built up enough experience that it was a pretty quick turnaround on my area exams. I just set a goal. Here's my goal. I'm going to take one a month, not boom, 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 done. Want to mention one thing about firm culture related to the CSI and perhaps Northern Virginia. Every firm, and I know a few of the firms that introduced today, has the different labor allocation. I had a similar conversation with a friend of mine where a certain group of people, they only do the detailing, and these guys are only doing this conceptual design, and the only person that pays attention to the contracts is the PM. And there's a small number of them in the firm that have that specialized knowledge. Graham Parker is a much flatter organization, and everyone is expected to be able to take on all these different tasks. So I'm just kind of curious to other people, how do you see your firm approaching this? Is this something that like a specialty will drive you further in one direction, or how do you guys operate?
William, if I could, I had one more answer to the previous question before folks launch into that answer, but just on the matter of how do you find time to study, quickly, I would just say, when I took the exam, it was only offered once a year. So everybody studied like crazy because you did not want to have to wait a whole nother year to pass the exam. Now that the exams, you can, take them and retake them and, until you pass them as fast as you can retake them. I guess I'm not sure if there's a waiting period at all.
I think it's a little bit of a waiting period.
Okay. Well, I think there's a couple different approaches. Some people still do what I did, which is just study like crazy for everything and try to get it all passed at one time. And some people, if your time is more valuable to you than your money, if you have financial resources to take exams multiple times, just take all the exams and see what you pass without studying at all. You might pass 4 or 5 or 6 exams without even studying, and then you only have to study for the remaining 3 or 4. So I know some people who have taken that approach to save on time, on studying time. But sorry, William, let's jump back to William's question.
Actually, just want to clarify a little bit. I think, finding it was helpful to hear all the study resources and approaches to different exams. The bottom line is you have to make the time, and it's hard to find the time in general. I guess I'm really curious to hear, how do you value that time investment of studying, of potentially taking on a more advanced project role, or investing at different places, and when is how do you make the decision of when to do that, if that makes sense?
I would say it's holding yourself accountable. Because for starters, I'm a procrastinator. I take forever to start a project because I keep thinking and overthinking on how to start it and how I would maintain that start. So for me, it was signing up for a study course where I would have to show up and then attend the course, take notes, and then once that course ended, I had that schedule in my week schedule. So it was easy to maintain it. And also by telling other people that you're studying for it, they'll check in with you. And if you don't have an answer for them or some kind of response, then that's on you. So having a study buddy or just someone checking in on you helps a lot as well.
So Kristen, is your question also, how do you decide what is valuable to what you want to do? Like, how do you decide what will benefit you the most?
It wasn't really my question, but if you have an answer to that, I'm sure it would be helpful for other people to hear.
Yeah, I mean, well, in response to my own posed question, like, how do you decide what is valuable? I mean, I know for myself that, I'm literally right now at this this tree branch, this broken path where, I don't know if I want to be a licensed architect. I really like what I'm doing right now. But there are other things I want to pursue. And so the whole reason I studied for the CDT first was because it gave me a better understanding of what I'm doing now, rather than learning everything that I learned on the exam over the span of, 3 or 4 years, having to learn it in the field or learning from, other people in the office. So that's why it's like, if you want to continue what you're doing, look into, like with the CDT, it was just because I wanted to see if this is really what I want to do. And so far, I'm really liking it. But that's why I'm studying for the CCA right now, because it's like, okay, I really like it, but do I like it this much now that I'm, devoting all of my free time to studying for it? And, do I like it enough? Okay, if I don't really like it, I'm going to go do something else. So I also use certifications as a way to gauge whether this is something I want to invest my very valuable free time.
I'd like to piggyback on that question also. So I knew that I wanted to be an architect. I knew I wanted to be an architect since I was 8. And so once I finished grad school, I gave myself 2 years to actually learn in the field, because there's only so much you learn in school, right? I feel like school, even if you have an accredited program, it teaches you the language of the profession. And you really learn how it actually works in the field. And if you take some of these certifications. So I wanted to learn more than I was exposed to, because depending on the size of your firm, you may only work in 1 or 2 phases of a project. And so if you are on a project from the beginning to the end, you may experience about 75 to 80% of the process that it takes, right, for architecture. And you may experience less than that. So for me, after 2 years, I wanted to start studying for my AREs so I can learn more about the profession in general. And so that's why I started that process then. I wanted to combine my experience and check that with the knowledge that you learn from the AREs that you need to be a certified or a licensed architect. Oh, and one more comment. So for the AREs, if you can take it as soon as you want if you fail it, right? However, if you fail it 3 times, then you have, I think it's a 6-month waiting period to take it again.
And to piggyback up on Linda, the reason why I also like the CDT is that it's the knowledge domains that it covers is very well aligned with the phases of the project delivery process. So from schematic through documentation, through pre-construction, construction, and life cycle. So I feel like by now learning about the different phases of my work, I can then go back at my firm and request to further get experience in a certain phase of a project. It makes it easier for you to ask and figure out what you want to specialize in if you have a little background knowledge in that before you get yourself into it.
Can I just say, like, for me, I unapologetically wanted a raise. I mean, I think, like, looking, and how do you get a raise? You have to add value to your firm. So I was looking for avenues of, like, how can I add value to my firm? You know, I became a Revit certified professional. I got my PE license within 3 years. I'm studying for my CDT exam. I mean, and it's worked. And I think that's like, you know, hey, you want to raise? Like, okay, look for what your firm needs. And, you know, is it someone who can handle CA, someone who can write specs, someone who knows, who could be a project manager and do it all. And I think if you are young and you have the drive to like want to go further, these certifications are a really great way to demonstrate you have incredible value, you know, in your firm.
Like, I'm the same way. I wanted to add value to myself because I felt like I wasn't as worthy because I didn't come from an accredited program. Like, I wasn't as valuable as somebody who can become a licensed architect almost immediately and immediately start studying. So I was like, crap, how do I find a way for, like, how do I convince them to keep me, basically? So like, I have been looking into these certifications. It's why I started with I hate to keep bringing it up, CDT, but it's just, you know, what my firm really appreciated. It's what they wanted to see from their employees. So I did that. So getting these certifications before dropping tens of thousands of dollars on grad school, before I even know that, because I mean, there are avenues where I can become a licensed architect without having to go to grad school. It's a much longer process, and it is much more, it's less expensive, but it's just a matter of what are your priorities? And for myself, I cannot afford grad school. Like, I just can't. So getting experience in other certifications can bring just as much real world value as anything.
I do want to quickly interrupt and be mindful of time because it's 6:32. I'm happy to leave this open if you guys have time and want to keep talking, but also it has been an hour. So if anyone needs to leave, I totally understand, but just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you, everyone.
I'm going to take that opportunity to
Thank
step out.
you.
So.
Okay. Thank you guys.
See ya.
Thanks
Take
for
care.
coming, guys. Bye.
All right.
Yeah. Thanks for hosting, Kat.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for
And
having
if
us, Kat.
anyone has any follow-up questions, well, that was mostly the panel, but if you have follow-up questions, feel free to email me.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.